Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Listen to English channel. We have another fantastic story for our B2 level listeners today. Have you ever dreamed of quitting your job and doing something completely different? Something you truly love? Today's guest, Maya, did exactly that. She left a prestigious career in law to open her own small pottery studio. But as you will hear, following your dreams isn't always easy. It can be messy, stressful, and full of doubt. Maya is here to share the honest truth about her journey from the courtroom to clay. As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Let's listen to Maya's story.
Hi everyone, I'm Maya. Thank you for having me. If you look around my studio right now, you'll see bags of powdery clay stacked in the corner, shelves filled with half-finished mugs waiting to be glazed, and a fine layer of gray dust covering absolutely everything, including me. Looking at me now, in these dirty overalls, with clay under my fingernails, you probably wouldn't guess my previous life. Just 2 years ago, I was a different person, living a completely different existence. I was a senior associate at a prestigious law firm downtown. My world was sharp, clean, and incredibly expensive. I wore tailored suits that cost more than my current monthly rent. My office was on the 42nd floor, encased in glass, with a panoramic view of the city skyline. On paper, I was the picture of success. My parents were proud. My bank account was full, and I was on the fast track to becoming a partner before I turned 35. But if I'm being honest with you and with myself, I was deeply miserable. My life felt hollow, like a beautiful, shiny shell with nothing inside. I was working 80, sometimes 90-hour weeks. The pressure was unrelenting. It was a cutthroat environment where everyone was competing to bill the most hours, and showing vulnerability was seen as a weakness. I spent my days fighting legal battles for giant corporations, arguing over contract clauses that felt utterly meaningless to me on a human level. I was constantly fueled by caffeine and adrenaline, living in a state of chronic low-level anxiety. I had money, yes, but I had absolutely no time to enjoy it. I had a beautiful apartment that I basically only used for sleeping 4 hours a night. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, and countless dinners with friends because something urgent came up at the office. It always did. I remember the turning point clearly. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a quiet, terrifying moment of clarity. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was alone in the office, proofreading a massive merger agreement for the 10th time, my eyes blurring from staring at the screen. I had missed my best friend's engagement party that evening because of this document. I stood up to stretch my aching back and walked to the window, looking out at the dark city below. I saw the reflection of a tired, pale woman in the glass, and I barely recognized myself. I realized that I had climbed the ladder of success, only to find out it was leaning against the wrong wall. The thought of doing this for another 5 years, even with more money and a bigger title, didn't excite me. It filled me with dread. I realized I was trapped in what people call golden handcuffs. The lifestyle was too addictive to leave, but the work was crushing my soul. I knew I needed a change, a drastic one. I had taken pottery classes on weekends years ago, and it was the only time my racing mind ever truly quieted down. When my hands were in the wet clay, I couldn't check my emails. I couldn't worry about deadlines. I was just present. So, Against the advice of almost everyone, my colleagues thought I was having a breakdown, and my parents were horrified I took a massive leap of faith. I handed in my resignation, cashed in my savings, rented this drafty little studio space in an industrial part of town, and decided to become a full-time ceramic artist. The transition was brutal. If I had any romantic notions that running a pottery studio would be a peaceful, meditative existence filled with endless creativity, reality hit me hard in the face within the first month. Leaving the structure of the corporate world was disorienting. Suddenly, I didn't have an IT department to fix my computer, an HR department to handle paperwork, or a steady paycheck hitting my account every 2 weeks. I was no longer just an artist. I was the accountant, the marketing manager, the janitor, the logistics coordinator, and the salesperson. The financial pressure was immense, a constant weight on my chest that was different from corporate stress. This was about survival. I burned through my savings much faster than I anticipated. Kilns are expensive to run. High-quality glazes cost a fortune, and rent in this city is unforgiving. There were weeks when I didn't sell a single piece on my online shop. I remember sitting on the floor of my apartment, eating instant noodles for dinner again, watching my bank balance dwindle on my phone screen, wondering if I had made a catastrophic mistake. Then there was the physical toll. I was used to sitting in ergonomic office chairs all day. Now, I was hunched over a pottery wheel for hours, lifting heavy bags of clay and standing on concrete floors. My back constantly ached. My hands were perpetually dry and cracked, and I was always exhausted in a physical way I hadn't experienced before. But perhaps the hardest battle was internal. I suffered from severe imposter syndrome. I was surrounded by artists who had been doing this their whole lives, who had degrees in fine arts. I felt like a fraud, a lawyer playing pretend in an apron. I worked alone in silence most days, which was a stark contrast to the noisy, busy law firm. The isolation sometimes amplified my doubts. I would look at a mug I just made and think, why would anyone pay $40 for this? It's just mud. The lowest point came about 6 months in. I was desperate for cash flow, so I accepted a custom order that was way too big for me to handle alone. 50 matching dinner plates for a new trendy restaurant opening in the neighborhood. I needed the money, so I said yes, promising a 2-week turnaround. It was impossible. I rushed everything. I worked feverishly, late into the night, ignoring the fundamental rules of ceramics. Clay needs time to dry slowly and evenly before it goes into the blazing heat of the kiln. Because I was rushing, the plates still had too much moisture deep inside. I'll never forget opening the heavy lid of the kiln after the final firing. I expected to see 50 beautiful, glossy white plates. Instead, I was greeted by a graveyard of ceramic shards. More than half the plates had cracked or completely exploded during the firing process. I stood there in the heat coming off the kiln, looking at weeks of hard work destroyed in an instant. I had no product to give the client, no money coming in, and I had wasted expensive materials. I felt utterly defeated and humiliated. I collapsed onto a stool and cried for an hour. At that moment, the security of my old law office seemed incredibly tempting. I thought about calling my old boss, begging for my job back, and admitting that this whole follow your passion thing was a naive failure. I was one phone call away from quitting, but something stopped me. I realized that if I went back to law now, I would always wonder what if. I decided to give myself 6 more months, but I had to change my approach. I had to stop trying to operate like a factory. I wasn't a machine. I had to embrace the fact that I was a small batch artist. I called the restaurant owner, apologized profusely, and explained what happened. Surprisingly, he was understanding. We renegotiated a smaller order with a realistic timeline. That disaster forced me to slow down. I stopped trying to mass-produce trendy items I thought would sell quickly. Instead, I started focusing on making pieces that I genuinely loved. Pieces that felt authentic to me, even if they took 3 times longer to make. I began working on a series of large vases inspired by the ocean, spending days just glazing them, trying to capture the movement of waves with swirling blues, greens, and whites. It was therapeutic. I wasn't rushing. I was creating. A few weeks later, on a rainy Saturday, a woman wandered into my studio during my open hours. She looked tired and sad. She walked around quietly, not really looking at anything, until she stopped in front of one of those ocean vases. It wasn't technically perfect. It had a slight lean to it, but it had a powerful energy. She stared at it for a long time. I was about to offer her help when I noticed she was crying silently. I walked over gently. She turned to me and apologized for the tears. She told me that her mother had passed away 2 weeks ago. Her mother had grown up by the sea and had always felt most at peace near the ocean. The woman told me that looking at the vase with its crashing blue colors felt like taking a deep breath of sea air. It made her feel closer to her mom. She bought the vase, handling it like it was the most precious thing in the world. When she walked out the door, I felt a sensation in my chest that I had never felt in 10 years of winning court cases or closing multi-million-dollar deals. It was a profound, quiet sense of fulfillment. I hadn't just generated paperwork. I had used my own hands to create a tangible object that connected deeply with another human being during a difficult time. That connection was worth more than any bonus I had ever received. My life now is not easy. I work harder than I ever did as a lawyer, but it's a different kind of hard. It's physical, messy work. I still worry about money constantly. I don't have health insurance provided by a company anymore. My car is old, and I buy clothes secondhand, but the trade-off is worth it. I no longer dread Monday mornings. When I unlock the studio door and smell the earthy scent of wet clay, I feel a sense of belonging. I've learned that success is a very personal definition. For me, it's no longer about the prestige on my business card or the view from a high-rise office. It's about the freedom to create, the ability to connect with people through my work, and the feeling of contentment when I wash the clay off my hands at the end of a long, productive day.
What an honest and inspiring journey from Maya. It's a great reminder that redefining success takes courage. And it's okay for things to be messy sometimes. In this B2 level video, you heard great vocabulary related to work and emotion, such as hollow, prestigious, imposter syndrome, tangible, and fulfillment. Thank you for practicing your English listening with us today. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share it with a friend who might enjoy practicing English too. Every story you listen to brings you closer to fluency. See you in the next video.